Hey Starport peeps, this is Melanie here in Studio C, right here in my living room. C for cycling, whereas Studio F is right over there on my floor mat. Hey, so I just really appreciate you joining me really quick to cover some basic things before we get into a warm-up workout and a cool down. So what's really important is we set up the bike to us, right? So maybe there's another person in your house using your bike, or maybe you just got a bike, whether you rented it or bought one, and it's really important to have this set up for you, right? One, so that you have a good workout. You're using the full range of motion of your muscles, but two, more importantly, is that you preclude injuries, okay? So I'm going to go through some things about that are really important. I'm going to step through some safety things that you need to keep in mind and talk through the hand positioning on the bull horns, but also some terminology that you're going to want to know or remember. I'm not going to assume that everybody tuning in has been one of our regular participants. There could be somebody that's like totally new. So welcome, hey, and let's see. I'm also going to talk about, some other really important things as we go along. So first, here's some things that's really important for you to have for your ride, okay? So you're going to want to have at least two 16.9 ounce bottles of water, because you're going to want to have 40 ounces of water for every 45 to 50 minute workout as a minimum. This does not count towards the amount of water that you drink because you're alive today, right? So you're going to have 8 ounces of water before your workout, 24 ounces minimum during the ride, and 8 ounces afterwards. You're also going to want to have a towel to wipe off your sweat. Now, I also just want to give a little plug and a thank you so much in advance for anyone who's renting a bike from Starport. Thank you so much for being proactive and just very thoughtful and just wiping up and taking care of the bikes everywhere that you sweat, right? Just helping, just every time you work out, wiping them up. Thank you so much. All right, the other thing you're going to want is a heart rate monitor. You see I have my chest strap here. Haven't put it on yet. I'll put that on for the workout. I don't have a cycling computer, but what I do have is my watch that goes with my chest strap. It's going to tell me my heart rate. Now, so like I said, I don't have a cycling computer. Mine wasn't working right, so I just took it off. Now, if you rented one from Starport, you have got the cycling computer on there, right? So I'll try to remember to talk through a few things with that. And oh yes, before we get started, really important, a quick arts and crafts that I need you to do, okay? So go find yourself a big washer like this one. Now notice it's kind of a thin washer, but it's really fat. It's got some weight to it. That's what we want to use. And then I want you to get some string, or this is yarn, but it tends to turn a lot, so it probably wasn't the best thing. So maybe try some, string will be a little bit better. You want at least 2 foot of string to have enough length, right? So tie one end around your washer, and the other end you want to make kind of a loop. You want to have, probably, close to 2 feet with just this length here. And I'll show you in a little bit where it's going to help us out. Unless you have a mirror, set up in your area with your bike, which if you're like me, you don't, right? This is in my living room. So, so this is going to help us with our setup, okay? So pause the video, come back. I'll be waiting here for you. All right, so I'm going to show you some things for setting up the bike to you, right? I'm going to step back here. Now, I am wired. I'm wired. Yeah, no, I really am wired. And so I got to be careful. All right, so I'm going to step back here to the back foot of the bike. I find the top of my hip, the point that's sticking out the farthest. And if I was to take a line and just draw it straight out to the saddle should be right there, the top of the saddle to the top of my hip bone that sticks out. Now, if the saddle's a little high or low, just go ahead and adjust it. Come back here to the back of the bike. We're going to get into a squat, engage the core, push that butt back, come down, and come back here to where the pin is and unscrew the pin, right hand rule. Unscrew the pin, pull it out, adjust the seat up or down, pop the pin back into one of the holes, tug pull test to make sure that it's inside, and turn that pin, right hand rule, back to where it is hand tight. Now it's going to be very important every time you go to ride, whether or not somebody else is using your bike, just make sure that all of these places that we're going to adjust, just make sure, even if you didn't touch them, that they're still tight, okay? One, you don't want the bull horns or the saddle to fall or slide on you during your ride. You could be injured, okay? So now we've got a preliminary setup for the height of the bike. We're going to come back to that in a couple of minutes. Let's focus right here before we get on the bike to the bull horns. Now, on average, most people might have the height of the bull horns at the same height as the saddle. Now, if you're tall, if you're pretty tall and have long arms, you might want to have it lower just a little bit. Or maybe if your bull horns slide out, you might push the bull horns out and just tighten that setting back again. Mine don't adjust that way, but if you have one of the Schwinn bikes from Starport, those do. Okay, now let me talk really quick to the people with short torsos and short arms. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to adjust the height of the bull horns all the way to the maximum, to the stop, okay? Now, and then also for the forward and aft adjustment here, pull this all the way back towards you if your bull horns adjust. So for this, same as the height of the saddle, we're gonna, right hand rule, unscrew this pin, pull it out, adjust it, pop that pin back into a hole, tug pull test, make sure it's inside, and then hand tight here. Mine needs a little bit extra because it just tends to get loose, right? All right, so height of the bull horns. We have a preliminary setting here for the height of the saddle, but when we get on the bike, here's something we're going to look at. We're going to look at the angle of our knee in just a moment. And I do this demonstration here because you'll be able to see me better. So from right here. So hopefully you can see my knee in the video. So right now my legs are straight. My knees are pretty much at a 0 angle. I want you to have a very slight bend. Boom. Very slight bend when we get on the bike. Okay, so very slight bend. If this is 180 degrees on both sides, and say this is my knee right here, I'm going to bend my knee just a little bit so that this angle on the back side of my leg is less than 180 degrees, maybe about 175, 170 for those that are into geometry and geeking out. Okay, geometry lesson over. Let's safely get onto the bike. There's a couple of things that I want to talk about when we are looking at the height of the saddle to know if it's the right height or not. Now, first is I'm going to clip in, but for those that are putting their feet in the cages, and I'm just going to demonstrate that really quick here. I hope you can see my foot at the bottom of your screen here. So I'm just going to pull the adjustment strap out of, there we go, out of the second part of the buckle. Well, I thought I was. And now I'm going to loosen the buckle a little bit here. I'm going to push my foot into the cage. Now, this is really important. Say this is your foot. Here's where the balls of your foot are, right there, where my knuckles are. I want the pivot point of the pedal right underneath the balls of my foot. Okay, so go ahead and try to check that out as you pivot your foot forward and back. Feel that pivot point of the pedal. Where is the balls of your foot with respect to it? You want it right on top. So your feet may not be pushed all the way in, right? You may have just a little bit of space there where your toes don't go all the way into the cage. This is really important for power in your stroke on the front part of the stroke, but also for the adjustment of your knee, okay? So once I get that set, I'm going to pull up with that adjustment strap and then just take that strap and just push it back into the second part of the buckle there. But go ahead and pause the video and set up your other foot with that same method. And okay, so starting the video back again. Now, I have got the pivot point of the pedal right underneath the balls of my foot. Make sure that I'm flat-footed the whole time. Remember, don't toe in and don't heel in, flat-footed. I'm not there to help keep you accountable, but you got this, you know? All right, so now I want to place this leg basically in the 6 o'clock position. So the shaft is going to be straight down. Okay, so 12, 3, 6, 9. As your foot goes around, driving the pedals, it looks kind of like a clock. And I'm going to refer to those positions, 12, 3, 6, 9. So right now my leg is in the 6 o'clock position. The shaft is straight down. All right, everything aligned here. Now, take a look at the angle of your leg that we just talked about a moment ago. Do you have the right angle there, or are you going to lock out your knee? If you're going to lock it out, get off, adjust it, right? Because we don't want to lock out your knee. If you have too much of an angle, you might need to raise it just a small amount. Now, here's something to keep in mind. If you know that your bottom is going to start expressing its displeasure as we get to riding and you're going to want a seat cushion, go ahead and get that seat cushion now. Pause the video and reset up the height of the bike up to this point, because that is going to raise you on the saddle, which means you need to lower the seat a little bit. It may just be like just a half a mark, okay? But it is going to make a difference on the height of the saddle, but also that forward and aft adjustment of the saddle. I promise you, it will make the difference to your knees. Okay, so now picking up with that, we're going to figure out the forward and aft setting for the saddle, and this is where our arts and craft item comes into play. So I'm going to take this. Now my foot, pivot point of the pedal, flat-footed, but the shaft is now straight forward, where my foot is in a 3 o'clock position on this side and this leg is in the 9 o'clock position. Okay, so I'm going to take this right here, and the top of the string, I'm going to place it on my knee, and so that the washer is going to just barely touch the top of my shoe, okay? But this is right at the point of my knee that sticks out the most. Now, see what's happening in case you can't see my shoe. If this was my shoe here, and say this right here are the balls of my foot, I want that washer right there. And see, that's why we did this, because gravity, it's going to go straight down. I want to see where that's touching. And so I want it to touch right there at the balls of my foot. If it's behind the balls of my foot, then I'm going to want to move the seat forward just a small amount, right? Or however much, until this is right straight down on top of the balls of my foot. If it's in front, very important that you move your saddle back just a little bit, okay? Now also notice too that sometimes when you ride, you might move forward on the saddle. I tend to, and you'll notice me sometimes in a ride, I'll push myself back. It's just natural. So, but take a moment, do this. Very important for you to have the right positioning. Okay, so as we get onto the bike, let me talk about two safety features, or safety things that you need to remember. Okay, and as I just turn my legs, I kind of check it out. Does this feel natural? Am I locking out my leg? If it feels fine, let's go on. Okay, now the brake is associated with this red knob in front of you. So this red knob, if you turn it to the right clockwise, it adds resistance. Left is counterclockwise and it takes off resistance. By the way, make sure you've zeroed it out right now, because we're about to find your flat road. And if you just press straight down, that engages the brake. This is so important. I want you to take a moment and try that. See how much effort it takes. So get your legs moving and then just hit that brake and see how much effort it takes to stop your legs, okay? Now, if your foot comes out of the cages or slips out of the clips, two things you need to remember to do. Throw the leg out that came free and hit that brake. So this is what it looks like. I'm riding along. My foot comes out. Oh my gosh, throw the leg out and just hit that brake, right? You need to practice that. That is so important, because otherwise that pedal, your other leg is driving that pedal into your leg if you don't move it out of the way, okay? Awesome. So let's find our flat road now. So get your legs moving. If you've got a cycling computer, turn that on. Power button is probably at the top if you have our Starport Schwinn bikes, carbon blue. with the computers that we have attached to those. And for those cycling computers, just above the midway point on the right is where you have the little gear setting with the little gear looking symbol there, and right above that is your RPM. Find your RPMs and get those legs moving at about 80 to 85, maybe about 90 RPM. Find your pace somewhere in there. Pause the video if you need. All right, so now we're going to do a test. Reach down and add a little bit of resistance until you find the first point, the very first point that you feel resistance, okay? Now remember, we zeroed it out, so we might have to add just turn it a little bit more. But that's because your flat road's not going to be the same. As you strengthen your legs, you're actually going to add a little bit more resistance. So every time, I just zero it out every single time. Especially if it's like an early morning ride, everything feels heavy. All right, so if I'm more awake, then I'm like, oh yeah, I got this, All right, so get your legs moving. Find that first point of the resistance. Like when you're riding a real bike on a road that is flat, a real bike. Now that flat road's going to push back on you a little bit, right? Versus if you're on a hill of some kind, the road's going to push back on you even more depending on that incline. So that's what we're feeling for, that first point of resistance. Now let's test it out. Here's part one. Get your legs going about 95 RPM. All right. Did that resistance stay the same? Or did it go away? Or were you not able to get your feet up to 95 RPM? Now, if you weren't able to get your feet up to 95, you have too much resistance on likely, okay? So just adjust the resistance back a little bit, pause the video, try again until you feel the same amount of resistance at your pace as you do at 95 RPM. Now, part two of the test. I want you to pick up that leg speed. So here we go. Speed it up right here. 100 RPM to 105. Pick it up. Now, the resistance you feel should have gone away if you had the right amount of resistance set at the lower speed. But if it didn't go away, then you might have had a little bit too much at the slower speed. So you might just take a little bit off and just have that feeling of freewheeling, right? But you just to see what it feels like, right? So slow your legs back to 95, take a little bit of resistance off, right? Try again, 100 to 105 RPM. All right, did it go away, the resistance? It did, great. Now add a little bit of resistance, right? And that's our flat road. As you slow your legs back down, remember to take that little bit off. That's how you find it, okay? So if you need to pause the video and try that out for a little bit, do that. If you've got a cycling computer that tells you a gear, take note of that, right? It'll help you. All right, so let's talk about some hand positions on the bike. I've got a few hand positions I want to go through. This is hand position 1 right here. This is primarily a position you might be in for the warm-up. You'll be in 1 or 2, okay? I'm usually not in 1, but this is a warm-up position, okay? You can be, or you can be in 2 like me. 2 is right here, right in front of me. Or for those who have wide shoulders, you're going to find it more comfortable right here on the edges of the bullhorns. All right, so there's our last position. It's hand position 3. It is all the way at the tip of the bullhorns. The only time I'm going to be there is when I am all the way out of the saddle on a heavy hill. And we'll demonstrate that in just a few minutes, okay? So let's take a moment and let's talk about posture. Usually if you've been in my classes, you know that I kind of like to warm up moving our legs a little bit, and then we do like our shoulder rolls and some stretches on our upper body just to kind of loosen up a little bit. And then what do I say? Stack up a nice neutral spine, shoulders back. So roll those shoulders back, head back, chin down. Now engage that entire core right here. Now, as I come forward towards the bullhorns, I'm keeping all of this nice and pretty and stacked, right? Hinging only or pivoting only at the hips. So this angle right here, back to geometry, the angle between my torso and my leg here is going to change at the hips only. I am not curving at my spine. Got it? hinging at the hips, coming forward, hands fall into position 2. And this position is going to stay the same whether I'm in the saddle or out of the saddle. All right, so just keep an eye on your posture. Keep yourself accountable to that, because I can't be there to, help remind you, hey, relax those shoulders, but I'll try to remember to say those things during our workout. All right, so let's talk about some positions on the bike and the terminology that we're going to use. So this right here, I'm in the saddle and I'm on a flat road. This is called a seated flat. Let me teach you how to go to a standing flat, okay? Now this is not an upper body workout. My hands are just for balance. This body position, like I said, never changes. All the work, well, the core is engaged, but all the work is down here in my legs, okay? Now, when I want to stand up, a couple of things need to happen. I need to push through my feet into the pedals to bring myself up out of the saddle. I want a smooth transition out, but I'm gonna have to add some resistance. Why? Because right now, it's just the strength of my legs that need to drive the weight of the flywheel, which is how much resistance I have on there, right? I'm pushing a flywheel, physically, right? But when I stand, now I have my weight and the strength of my muscles driving the flywheel, okay? So I'm gonna need to add, depending on how much a person weighs, right? So you're just gonna have to feel it out. Remember this flat road feel right here, that's what you're looking for. All right, are you ready? You might watch me, then pause the video, back it up, and try it yourself and watch me again. All right, here we go. In 3, 2, 1, smooth transition out of the saddle, adding a little bit of resistance. Yep, finding that flat road. And 3, 2, 1, smooth transition back into that saddle. Take off that little bit of resistance so you're back on your normal flat road in the saddle. Let's see. Keep moving your legs. I got to adjust the video just a little bit here. All right. Excellent. Now, jumps on a flat road, that is another technique. Basically, we're transitioning between a standing flat and a seated flat, except I'm not going to be changing my resistance in between until I'm at the end of my jumps. So here's how that looks. You ready? Oh, and I'm going to be up out of the saddle the same number of counts that I'm in the saddle, okay? So it's like an interval, basically, right? I may do 8 counts or longer, but for the sake of the time for the video, I'm just going to do 4 counts. Ready? 3, 2, 1, smooth transition. Add that little bit of resistance. 2, 3, 4, and down. 2, 3, 4, and take it up. 2, 3, 4, and down. 2, and take off that little bit of resistance. We're just going to do 2 jumps there. All right, so we're back on our flat road. All right. So, seated flat, standing flat, jumps on a flat. Let's get ourselves on a seated climb. Now, we're not going to put ourselves on a heavy hill because our heart rate's probably not, we're probably not really warmed up just yet, right? This is just some basics that I wanted to run through, but add a little, pause. Okay, speed limit on a flat road, I forgot to say that. 80 RPM to 110. Very important to follow the speed limit, okay? Now, as you add some resistance to put yourself on a hill, let your legs slow down just a little bit. Very slight incline though, right? So your speed limit changes now. 60 RPM to 80 RPM, okay? Very important. As you get on a steeper and steeper incline, you're gonna wanna make sure to watch your speed. Right? Make sure that you don't fall below 60 RPM because that's too much resistance. You can actually injure your body by having too much resistance. What does that look like? I see y'all do it sometimes in class, right? So you add too much and here's what happens. Now I've got to use my weight to grind and see my legs slow down and I'm grinding. That's too much. Just back it off. No shame in the game. Honor your body. And even if you just start to get tired at whatever resistance you had at first that was good and you start to get tired, that's all right. Just back it off a little bit, right? Because you want to make sure to have right posture and body positioning and everything to have a good workout, right? Always honor your body. All right, so we have a little bit of resistance. We're on a very slight incline. We keep increasing it to a point where, hey, I want to come out of the saddle. Now, I really don't have it loaded up that much. This is just demonstration because we're not fully warmed up yet, okay? But for demonstration to show you hands in 3, all right, so just like for a standing flat, I'm going to push myself out of the saddle through, like pushing through the pedals, through my feet, right? And my hands are just for balance. But here's the thing. So I'm going to add that last amount of resistance to come out of the saddle. I want to move one hand at a time. I don't want to do, look, Mom, no hands while I'm out of the saddle, right? Because I could fall or something, right? So, always think safety first, right? Move one hand and then the other, right? So say I have enough resistance loaded where that last turn is going to make me come out of the saddle. So just for demonstration purposes, if I added that last amount of resistance, I'm going to come up one hand and then the second one. Now, for body positioning, right? My hips are in the same place that they were for the standing flat. The only thing that changed was my upper body. I didn't curl my back. I hinged forward, right? So my hips are still over my feet and I still feel that saddle right behind me. I still feel that. That is all the same. I'm just here in this position. Now, say we can do running with resistance, similar body positioning. I can be here and I might be at a faster pace for running with resistance, or I can be here, hands in 2. I usually teach it here, hands in 2, just to distinguish between, more easily, from a standing climb, but technically it could be in 2 or 3. But I always teach it in 2 for those that are my regulars, right? You'll know that. So this would be running with resistance. It's enough resistance to make you come out of the saddle, kind of like a standing climb. Now, back in the saddle, we'd make a smooth transition back, take off some resistance. Now there's one more position, hands in 3, which are jumps on a hill that I'm going to talk about. There's also sprints, but I'm going to save sprints for another time to teach those, okay? Because those are actually a little bit harder than all the other things. So jumps on a hill, these are pretty intense too. So depending on the class, I may or may not do these, right? And but it's basically transitioning between a standing climb and a seated climb, and kind of like jumps on a flat road. I'm going to be out of the saddle the same amount of time as I'm in the saddle, and I don't change my resistance in between until I come back into the saddle for the last time, right? So it's going to kind of look like this. Now, once again, still pretending I don't have it loaded up because I'm still needing to warm up, right? I recommend the same for you because we're really not warmed up fully right now. Our heart rate is not ready for that intensity level. So just for the sake of demonstration purposes, right? Say this is my last turn, smooth transition out of the saddle, one hand, then the other, 3, 4, and down. 2, 3, 4, take it up. 2, 3, 4, and down. 2, here we go. Let's just take it back to our flat road. You see how it goes, right? That would be the motion for a standing climb. And let me see. Looking at my list, I think I pretty much covered everything. The last thing that I wanted to cover was heart rate. I just have like maybe a couple of minutes left here on the video. So for heart rate, it's really important that you monitor your heart rate throughout your workout, okay? If you've got a heart rate monitor, that's the best way. You can check your heart rate. I don't recommend your carotid. I do not recommend your carotid right here. I recommend taking your pulse at your radial, okay? That's going to be a lot better because you could potentially cut off blood flow to your brain, right? Just take it at your radial right here at your wrist. 2 fingers, count the number of beats that you feel in 6 seconds and add a 0, okay? And now for how do you know if that number's too high or if it's just right? Well, here's some conservative numbers to go off of, okay? Get some paper and pencil, pause the video, right, if you need. All right, so ladies, here's how you're going to calculate your conservative numbers. 226 minus your age. Gentlemen, for you, 220, 220 minus your age. Now, calculate this number. This is going to be, say, we'll just call it X. And this is going to be represent your 100% maximum heart rate. Now take that number X and you're going to multiply it out. Write down these: 50% of X, 65%, 75%, 85%, and 92%. So you want to have all 5 of those written down. Now remember, these are conservative unless you've been tested and know your numbers already, right? But they do change as you get older. They also change some as, as you're more fit or less fit, right? So you always want to have these numbers in mind. And just know that you may be a little bit better, or, maybe right on, or maybe a little bit different. It may be just a little bit different than what you calculated. That's okay. This is something, it's a place to start. Now, what do you do with that? 50 to 65% of your maximum heart rate is low intensity. 65 to 75% of your maximum heart rate is moderate intensity, and 85 to 92% is your high intensity ranges. Conservative numbers once again, right? Now, low intensity is great for any time. I don't know how much time I have left, so I'll try to hurry. If you haven't been working out in more than 4 weeks, you are completely deconditioned. I highly recommend, that's okay, right? Just start where you are and go from there. No shame in that, right? I'm proud of you for being here. So just, do low intensity for 8 to 12 weeks minimum, right? You got to reestablish that aerobic fitness base. It is so important, and your body is going to love you if you honor it, right? Now, say you've been working out consistently for that amount of time, or say maybe you didn't stop working out, and you're ready to go to moderate intensity, right? So moderate intensity, right? You can do that. You still want to have some low intensity in your workout as well. Let's see. Low intensity is good for any time, though. High intensity, however, is only supposed to be performed 10% of the time, only 5 to 6 weeks at a time, right? So what are you doing the other 90% of the time in that 5 to 6 week high intensity period? Well, the other 90% is split 50-50 between low to moderate intensity. And, if you're interested, I can send you an email about periodization, because that's what I'm referring to here, is a schedule called periodization. And your body's just going to love you so much better if you just honor it and following that kind of a schedule. All right, so that's about all I have time for right now. And I hope that you'll join me in the other videos. I'm gonna have a video for low intensity. I'll put together one for moderate intensity, and I'm gonna come up with something for a HIIT, I think, as well. So, stay tuned, and I look forward to seeing you. All right, take care.